Good morning. Welcome to Coffee Breaks with the Texas Institute for Child and Family Wellbeing. Coffee Breaks is a way for our followers to connect with us on Facebook Live as we talk with local professionals, leaders, and advocates who are dedicated to child and family well-being. Just a couple of announcements before we begin. If you're looking to receive CEUs, you had to sign up in advance on our website. If you've already signed up, please comment that you are here in the session right now or at least once during the session. And then once the session is over, we will be sending you an evaluation via email and in the comments in this session. So today I'm really excited to have Jenifer DeAtley with us from EngenderHealth. Jenifer pretty much knows everything that's happened in teen pregnancy prevention and working with teen parents in this area for many years. I don't know if you want to quantify it. It's a lot. But then she also has really unique perspective both nationally from your service on the Healthy Teen Network Board and the international work that EngenderHealth does. Yeah. So it's a really unique opportunity. So definitely chime in with any questions you have about that because she has a wealth of information. But I wanted to kind of just start by asking you about EngenderHealth and what... To me, it's always been a really unique perspective that you guys take, and I love it. But how would you kind of articulate that for folks?
Sure. Well, EngenderHealth, as you mentioned, it's an international organization. So we're working across the globe on issues that really address disparities for young women, young girls, and women, primarily as our focal point. And with that, looking at how different sectors of society play a role in creating sort of roadblocks for young girls and women to access reproductive health services in their communities. So on a broader level, we really work very community-based. We're, looking at how we can help providers better serve women, how we can create access for contraceptive services for women. And then we also work on really important advocacy issues around supporting young parents, around supporting women to have more rights and choice around how many children they have, the spacing of their children, whether or not they use contraceptives, that kind of thing. So that's sort of a bigger picture. Our office here in Austin is our US-based country office. And so here we really focus on how do we look at these issues of gender, of youth empowerment, youth involvement in the work that we do so that we can better serve youth and the needs that they've identified as important to them. Generally we lean towards the, sexual health and education perspective, right. But really working directly with youth to figure out what is the need for your community or your group of friends, and how can we better address those needs.
And it's so important because I know I've spoken to folks, not necessarily in the field, who would say, I'm 50 years old, not me personally, but
you don't look 50.
No. I'm 50 years old, I'm 40 years old, and I know more than a 15-year-old.
Yeah.
And so therefore they should listen to me and all the advice I give them.
Yeah.
But y'all's approach is different.
Yes, it's different.
How is that youth engagement approach so different, and why is it so important?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're a little different because we place young people front and center as experts in their own lives. We truly believe that young people and 50-year-olds have the knowledge, the skills, the education, the information that they need to make healthy decisions. What often is missing in that is that youth are not given the opportunity to sort of express those that information, to share as experts. And so by putting them front and center and allowing them to be part of that process, they really get to shape the services that serve them. And I think that's what's so unique about our approach, really directly listening to and understanding young people from an engagement perspective. And so, for example, one of the things that we do is, you've probably heard these buzzwords about human-centered design, where we really get with a group of young people and we say, okay, what's the issue? And what are young people doing that you could then create sort of a solution out of? And so oftentimes that stems straight to technology.
Yes.
And that's how we're sort of we consider our office an innovative office, right? So we're looking at how can we be more innovative to approach, these issues. And so, generally that is technology these days.
Yeah.
Young people aren't sitting in a classroom wanting to be talked at with curriculum. And yes, I do create curriculum and we have curriculum-based programs, but we try to reach outside of that, and figure out ways that we can meet them in the places where they are.
Right.
Which is not at school all the time. I mean, they're at school, but that's not where they're interacting with their friends.
Yeah, I remember I use this example when I've done trainings of, when I was in high school, all the adults thought they would be super cool and could connect with us if they rapped everything.
Yeah.
And it was just really, they made a fool of themselves.
Yeah.
And so I'm very aware of that when I'm working with young people of like, I am not cool to you, so I'm not even going to try, but I do want to listen to you, right?
Right.
And figure out where you're coming from, even if I don't understand the technology.
Yeah.
But I think there's definitely, this issue of like, it's a great idea to have youth engagement, but I've seen it be done really poorly in some areas where people are like, here, child, tell me what you think about this, 50-page book of rules and policies.
Yeah.
And kids are like, leave me alone.
Yeah.
And I know you guys don't do that. So you start with the youth, and they're telling you.
Well, they start by telling us what their needs are, too. And I think that's oftentimes when folks bring youth to the table, they've already gone down the road. What's the problem? What's the solution? What do we want to do about it? Now let's loop in young people and sort of exploit their ideas and show that we're engaging them when young people aren't feeling engaged by that process at all.
Yeah, and it is exploitive.
It is.
Yeah, it is. And a lot of adults don't see that.
I know. And so you have to partner with youth. I'll give you an example of a current program that we're running in the Austin community called Remix. You might have heard of it. Remix stands for the mix is maximizing their talents and their strengths, and the I stands for looking at like the future, imagining a healthy future, and then the X stands for exploring their identities. And so these were issues that youth told us, these are important to us. We have talents, we have strengths. We want to learn how to take those and apply it to our future selves. And we also want to explore who we are and our multiple facets of identities, And so the Remix program started with a small seed grant that we brought young people to the table and said, okay, based out of the Healthy Youth Partnership Needs Assessment that our community completed and published back in 2015, right?
Right.
Two major findings that we found from that needs assessment. One was that young people wanted to hear from people that were like themselves. They wanted to hear from their peers. They didn't want to hear from their math teacher or their health teachers.
Right.
And then secondly, they really wanted to hear from people who actually knew what that experience was like. And those people were teen parents. They're saying, if you're telling me that I should delay parenthood, I want to hear it straight from the source.
Right.
And so those were some of the key variables that we found from that needs assessment. A third one that I didn't mention that's also really important is I really wanted to address how gender played a role in their relationships. And young people are really tuning into this issue about, young women are becoming more empowered these days in terms of having more autonomy and control over their sexual identities. And so they really wanted to learn with their peers about how can we sort of pull back from some of these expectations from us as men and women and come together to learn in a variety of different ways.
Yeah.
And so as a result of the Healthy Youth Partnership Needs Assessment and these findings that came from our community's youth, we were able to then bring them to the table and say, okay, you've put out what the issue is, you've put out kind of how you want to deal with it, so what do we do with it? And so the solution for them was to create this program that they could get in school. They were still very interested in the school model, but that could also extend beyond school. And so, they put together a social media campaign that was on Instagram. Our community youth wanted to use Instagram. That's how they wanted to communicate with each other. So we built that with them. And then also, they really wanted to know, okay, well, we're talking about sexual health and we're also talking about violence prevention, but what about all these other health services that we need? If we are dealing with really big issues like sexual violence and dating violence, we need mental health services. We need to know who to call. And so one of the solutions that we were able to come up with them is that they need to be able to easily access where to go. And not only where to go, but where can they go where they know that that service is going to treat them with respect and dignity as a teenager.
Yeah.
And so what we ended up doing is putting together an app where they can get on. It works like Yelp, and they can map services that have been pre-vetted for them as being youth friendly and also being gay, lesbian, transgender, youth non-conforming, youth friendly, so that they know when they walk in the door that they're in a safe place.
So is this just for Travis County, or is it?
Right now it is just for Travis County, because we are doing a test model in this community with plans to release it statewide and then beyond.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, let's go. Let's get it to everybody.
Yes, our intention is to get it to everybody. But yes, right now we want to, make sure that we've got all the kinks worked out. And it's a community investment as well, because to go, if you put all the services on there, you could be sending youth to very untrusted places. And so the model we've chosen that really worked for them was that let's find out first and foremost if these are healthy places for us to go to.
So the youth are deciding, like, yeah, I felt comfortable here.
Yep. So then they go back into the app and they rate it. And they rate it based on, was it youth friendly for real? Was it, excuse the acronym, LGBTQ friendly? So did I feel comfortable being there? And then was it a quality service? So they rate these 3 and they can leave their comments.
That's great.
And then what we do is we go back and analyze the data that we find and go back to the providers and say, thumbs up, you're doing a great job. Or here's what the young people are saying about your services. What can we do to help you to improve those services?
Right.
Yeah.
So is this open to any kid right now? Like if somebody's watching and they're like, where do I get this app?
Yes.
Or are you ready for it to be advertised?
It's about to be pushed out, any day now.
Okay,
so we'll send out a big mass communication on it.
Great.
It's called Remix, but yeah.
Okay. And we will definitely,
promote
push it out too.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Thank you.
But tell me about teen parents, because you mentioned that youth were saying we want to hear from teen parents. And you guys have created some programming around that.
Right.
And I feel like oftentimes when I've worked with teen parents, they get shuffled over to a special program, and sometimes it's good for them, sometimes it's not. But like it's generally perceived by adults that like this is not the role model for my child.
Yeah.
This is not who I want my child to bring home as a friend.
Yeah.
And that always has made me really sad because it's so isolating.
It is.
But I think y'all's approach is very different.
Yes. So, and I think part of that, just comes from this, 60-year history around teen pregnancy prevention issues being a problem. And so what we've really structured is this discourse around teen parents are the problem.
Right.
There's a certain type of person that becomes a teen parent, and often that type of person has become single mothers, has become minority males, has become women of color, girls of color. And so we've really sort of segmented this population. And, I know in your last coffee talk, you talked a lot with Ashley about the foster care youth and how the services for them, aren't so accessible and where they're at. And I think that those, we really have sort of earmarked that the teens that become pregnant are a certain type of teen. And I like to say that all teens are a teen parent. All types of people can become a teen parent. I've worked with hundreds of them, as you know. And so what we've really tried to focus on is, readjusting how we look at a teen childbearing, if you will, as more of a community-based issue. More of an opportunity for us to look at how we've created programs that have continued to perpetuate that symptom. And so one of the things that we've been doing, which I do get a lot of pushback on, is putting young parents in the classroom as leaders and role models in their communities to really facilitate some of these programs. Right. So with the young parents that we work with, we train them as sexual health educators. They become certified in that, which is a great resume booster for them.
Right.
We give them the power and the opportunity to take their own experiences and how it sort of shaped their own lives and share that with their peers so that they, one, can go through this process of healing because they have grown up in a community where they've been shamed and stigmatized. So we sort of start to shed some of that off of them as individuals and really highlight the strengths that have come out of this experience, and the accomplishments that they've had. So they get to go into the classroom having gone through that process themselves and really feel like they are giving back to the community that has been there for them, or in some cases has not been there for them. But they get to give back, and they get to share their knowledge and information. They get to put themselves into leadership positions and make them really set a trajectory for themselves that's going upward and not continuing on this status quo of, well, I'm a young parent, I'll always be a young parent. And so then part of that, and so that's sort of our philosophy. And yes, I get a lot of, well, it's not like putting, an old drug abuser who's recovered in a support group to say, look, see, I can do it. Once a teen parent, always a teen parent. You can't change that perspective, but you can say, it's early childbearing.
Right.
I mean, we even need to stop using the terms teen parent.
Right.
They're a parent. And, if we look back at history and we look at some of the ways that, even from starting in the Carter administration, how we framed this issue of teen pregnancy, it's a major social problem. And we start to come back and say, well, really, historically, young girls have been having babies at similar rates. And in fact, our rates have plummeted, as you know, significantly. What has changed? Early marriage has changed. Shotgun weddings have changed. Women have stopped getting married as a consequence of becoming pregnant to very unhealthy, unfit marriages, and started to do it on their own. And so those are the things that we've seen change, not the rises necessarily in the teen pregnancies. And I think I went off course there, but
no, it's very interesting.
But so then the other element to what we're doing is saying part of the stigma and shame that young people receive as being parents is that they often don't have services in place for them to, have childcare for their kids. So they want to go to school, but they can't because there's no support system that's put into place by us. You've heard the old argument about if we have daycares in schools, it's just to encourage kids to have kids.
Right.
Well, that, actually it's going to encourage kids to finish their educations so they can become contributing members of society, right?
Right. And I think what I really love about this idea is it's not this kind of scary sex ed that's shaming. It's like, let's be real about what it means to be a parent. Because it is really hard, but there's also this beauty in the complexity of it. And we're going to acknowledge that too. But mostly we're going to treat the audience, right? Not just the teen parent, but that audience in a way where we're saying, yeah, we get it. You're a young adult too, and we're going to talk to you like a real person. Right. Not just don't have sex, because if you get pregnant, your life is over.
Yeah.
And
we are sitting here in Texas, so
yes.
In other states, they might be having a different conversation, but here in Texas, we continue to have that conversation that abstinence is the way to address education for preventing pregnancy, and we don't talk about preparing young people to make healthy decisions with their own, rights and their own choice within that. And then we don't prepare them for how to choose if to have sex, when to have sex, and with whom, and more importantly, why. And that's a conversation that, often doesn't happen because we don't want to glorify sex with young people. But if you look at and again, I try to steer away from rates and statistics, but if you do look at the rates of young people who are having sex, those are still there. It's how do we prepare them to do that in a way that is healthy for them and the right choice for them. And that's the problem with, moving many of our funds back into the abstinence-only education programs.
Yeah, I have that fear too. Like, it's almost like, when you're doing substance use and you want to say, yeah, I really never want my child to use drugs, that every parent would probably agree with that. But when we're talking about sex education, you do expect that at a certain point in your child's life, young adulthood, marriage, whatever, that they are going to have sex. And you would hope that that would be a good experience. And yet, until they're 18, our school system is telling them, this is a horrible, bad thing. And if you do it, there are severe consequences. And then all of a sudden, we're supposed to, switch flipped somewhere. I'm still unclear where that where that switch is, where we're like, oh yes, but you should be in a loving, caring relationship, by the time you're 30 and everything. We're setting people up for failure.
Well, and I think part of that flip switch, and this goes to some of the, if I can turn the table and say you also have done such amazing work in this community, we go back many years, is working within families and really educating families about how to talk with their kids about these issues, whether it's sex, sexuality, whether it's, drug use or peer pressure, bullying, like how can we really create these more well-rounded individuals? And a lot of that does happen in these conversations at home.
Right.
I always cite the Netherlands as being like the role model for sex education. It's a dinner table conversation there. And their young people grow up feeling much more confident about navigating their path into adulthood because they've been prepared by the people they trust the most, usually, which is their parents or their guardians or caretakers. And I certainly want to be careful about how I frame that, but that's where we need to really put more time and effort.
I agree. Like if there is a way to bring parents to the table, I think that's the way to go. It's just one of those things where we have generation after generation that's been raised in Texas has been told that sex is a dirty, bad thing.
Right.
Unless you're married, then it's supposed to be wonderful all of a sudden. But, I've worked with women in kind of domestic violence, sexual assault settings who had kids and couldn't name their body parts. Like we're failing at the most basic level of like making sure people understand just how a pregnancy works.
And so that brings me to also thinking about doing sort of a gender synchronized education approach too, because often even when we do teach those things, we teach girls over here and boys over here. So there's a couple of problems with that. One, we don't learn how all of our bodies work together, and two, we actually leave out a really important segment of population for youth who don't identify in those ways and who might have differently identified parts or whatever. So also thinking about how we can really bring together young people to learn about each other, and adults, let's do an adult class.
Yes, we should.
So they can teach their own kids about it too.
Yeah. And I think adults are really willing, because when you look at the opt-in or opt-out to go into sex ed classes, very few children are opting out of those.
Yes, I've had lots of conversations with parents who are begging for more education for their kids, who are recognizing that it's not happening inside the classroom, and we have to ask a question.
Oh no, we definitely
or answer a question.
We definitely want you guys to ask us some questions too. So if you have any questions for us, please throw them out there. Really, we want to hear, what are you seeing? Are we saying something that's consistent to what everybody else is seeing in their communities? Yeah, especially if you're not in the Austin area, because I know we have some great folks here.
So the Austin community is definitely sort of a standalone within the Texas state as a whole, right? We're much more progressive in our approaches. We're still behind the curve. And so one of the things that we've really learned at EngenderHealth, we serve as a capacity building assistance provider for the teen pregnancy prevention grantees across the United States. And we're working with these groups who are serving youth within their own communities to provide them some support and assistance to build the capacity of their work. And many of them struggle with sort of meeting some of these needs around engaging youth and being inclusive, being trauma informed, some of these really core elements of the work we do. But then also some of them are having these conversations about there's no political climate that's preventing us from doing the work that we do.
You're like, wow.
Yeah, I'm like, what? You don't have to fight every day for to do this work. So that's been interesting too, to really look at how we're up against sort of a completely different political climate in the work that we do, and so constantly trudging through, and then also finding the balance, because I want on this side a sex positive world, right? But we have to meet somewhere in the middle. And what can we do to really get our senators on board with us, get our politicians on board with us in a way that's comfortable?
Yes, I don't know about you, but when I have presented nationally and I just even start talking about how I'm from Texas It's like a kind of collective groan from the room, like, oh. Or people are so astonished that we're facing the issues we're facing.
People ask me all the time, why do you do this work in Texas? I'm like, this is where it's needed.
Exactly. And we have, there's these evidence-based package curricula, right? And so many of them that I've looked at, we have to add an anatomy lesson.
Yes.
Because,
we've had to do it with almost all of them.
Because our kids don't have that basic anatomy.
They don't.
Which is so depressing. And people nationally are kind of like, oh, why do you live there? I mean, I feel like it's my state, like, and I get to complain about it, but nobody else gets to. Yes. But it is embarrassing on a national and even international level of like what we are not telling our children, which I think is a basic human right.
Yeah, it is a basic, and that's sort of one of the mantras of our organization is that sexual rights are human rights for all people.
Yes,
even
children.
Even children.
Children are people.
Are they?
I think so.
I'm just kidding.
But I've definitely like gotten pushback from having that idea of like a parent's rights versus a child's rights, and I'm kind of like I do think children need the information.
So I don't remember the number of the House bill. I feel bad about that right now. But recently there was a bill. There was a couple of bills actually to give young parents, teen parents, medical control, decision making over their own health, their own lives.
Yeah, because they can do it for their kids.
They can do it for their children. So they have medical, control over making decisions for their own kids' health, but they don't have it for their own, which means that if a young parent, I need to figure out how to stop using that term, if a young person who's a parent wants to get on birth control to prevent a second pregnancy, they have to still have permission from their parent or guardian, right? But they're saying sort of the reason I wasn't on birth control in the first place is because I couldn't get that permission from my parent.
Or I couldn't even just ask them.
Or I couldn't even ask them. I couldn't talk about it. Right. And there's assumptions that, parents are like, well, they did it once. They're not going to, it's House Bill 1373. Thank you. So they're saying, I can't go back. My parents are assuming I did it once, I won't do it again. But we all know how fertile a woman is after they have a child. And so we're often seeing these repeat pregnancies too, because they don't have the opportunity to make that choice for themselves. And so I mentioned it because it goes back to like their human rights about being able to say, I'm not ready to have another kid right now, and I want to do something about it.
Yes, I totally agree. And I think you have done great work in the community, and EngenderHealth has. I know I didn't mention it, but you and I were both kind of the founding members, and you're the founding chair of
the Healthy Youth
Partnership. Yeah.
Which had a conference this week earlier, and the young parents that work with us did the closing plenary. Oh, they did? They did, and I got texts, emails, just people reaching out saying how amazingly they presented not only about their lives, but about sharing information. Like they weren't just sort of, we're teen parents and we're here to tell you about our story. They did a little bit of that, but they talked about their journeys and the information that they've learned being a part of the Remix program and working with EngenderHealth. And that's cool. Tears, standing ovations, the whole deal. Like I was really proud and excited. Cool. Yeah. Well, I think everybody is now looking forward to the app coming out. Yes. Yes. So let us know when it comes out, and we will make sure to cross-promote, and everybody who's listening. Thank you. Do the same. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap up and thank everyone who joined us today. If you do have any comments after we close or questions, let us know and we will get to them. And we'd really appreciate your feedback, even if you aren't receiving CEUs. So you can fill out that evaluation form that's linked in the comment section. If you signed up for CEUs, the evaluation form will also be emailed to you today, and you should receive that within a week. But thank you so much for joining us today. Keep on looking for us in future coffee talks, and if you have ideas of who you want to see and who you want to chat with, let us know so we can bring them in and kind of provide you some good information in a short time. And thanks for having me here, Monica. And I also wanted to say thanks to my partner for joining us on Facebook today. It's a big move for him. Yes, Jennifer's husband is out there watching. Thank you. All right. Thank you, guys.